No, no, no. Let's not listen to the FBI director. Let's listen to, sorry, what's your title? Senior writer at Town Hall, who is going to tell us that the FBI director is wrong.
Can I respond to that?
No, you cannot. I didn't ask a question.
I think it's funny to be lectured by an heir to the Levi Strauss Corporation, and honestly, that's probably why he doesn't consider property damage to be that big of a deal.
And I now recognize Mr. Goldman of New York for his 5 minutes of question.
Well, I really appreciate the lecture from my colleague from Arizona. The problem is that he's speaking, of course, anecdotally. So let's look at what our actual executive branch agencies in charge of overseeing white supremacy, overseeing the homeland. Let's look at the Homeland Threat Assessment, which says, among DVEs, domestic violent extremists, racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists, specifically white supremacist extremists, will remain the most persistent and lethal threat in the homeland. Confirmed by the director of the FBI. Now, I know all of a sudden you all on that side want to defund the FBI, you want to defund the ATF, but the director of the FBI, a Trump appointee, has said that the biggest threat to our homeland is not global terrorism, it is domestic terrorism. And we have these witnesses up here who are trying to tell us, and Mr. Erickson, in his opening statement, let me just point this out. This is the big example that we need to be so worried about, because in Atlanta, apparently, there were 23 individuals arrested for crimes ranging from vandalism to assault. We have 650 people who are murdered in mass shootings every single year. Almost 2 per day mass shootings. Sorry, 600 mass shootings, far more people. And we're supposed to be talking here about vandalism. Give me a break. You can't even say, you can't sit here, Mr. Erickson. You were an employee of the Department of Homeland Security, and I want to get to that in a minute. You can't even acknowledge what your own agency said, that the biggest domestic terror threat is white nationalism, white supremacy. You're trying to get us, gaslight us up here as if Antifa, which Mr. Rosas, apparently the expert now in organized terrorist activity, has overruled the FBI director who says, there's a headline, says Antifa is an ideology, not an organization. No, no, no. Let's not listen to the FBI director. Let's listen to, sorry, what's your title? Senior writer at Town Hall, who is going to tell us that the FBI director is wrong. And I'd like to introduce, there's no question. I'd like to introduce, by unanimous consent, an AP article saying the FBI director says Antifa is an ideology, not an organization.
Without objection, so ordered.
Can I respond to that?
No, you cannot. I didn't ask a question.
It's the gentleman's time. He can spend it any way he chooses.
Mr. Rojas, I noticed that you wanted to respond to something that one of my colleagues said about you a little while ago. I'd like to give you time to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. Well, I think it's funny to be lectured by an heir to the Levi Strauss Corporation, and honestly, that's probably why he doesn't consider property damage to be that big of a deal, because not only does he have that, but he also has what some would describe an impossibly good stock portfolio. But what I can tell you is that in these riots that happened 3 years ago, they, yes, big corporations did suffer damage and looting, such as Target, that would happen in Minneapolis. But a lot of the businesses, they were small businesses. They didn't come from multi-million-dollar families or corporations. And so the fact that they had to not only deal with the completely unnecessary COVID restrictions that were happening during that time, so their bottom line was already being hit by that. But then when you add on now having to replace lost inventory or to repair damage, or in some cases be completely lose your entire business, that happened to a family that I know in Kenosha. When you take, you're taking away people's ability to live, to livelihood. A friend of mine said that taking away someone's job like that is just a baby step away from murdering them, because how else are they supposed to support themselves? So I think it was absolutely disgraceful for Congressman Goldman to try to just denigrate my title, because it's not just a title. I've earned it because I was there chewing the dirt in these dangerous situations. I didn't see him in any of those places. I was there in New York covering, New York City covering some pretty violent protests there. And I'm also not just a writer, but I served honorably in the Marine Corps Reserves, and I was very proud of that. And so that's just typical elitist thinking, and that's why a lot of people hate Washington, D.C., and honestly, I don't blame them.